President, I move to take note of an answer by Senator Betts to my question in relation to Australia's deployment of troops to Iraq. I asked the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Betts, to confirm that it is the case that if a Prime Minister wanted to, he could deploy 3,500 troops to invade northern Iraq unilaterally if he wanted to, because that is the current law in Australia. And I pointed out that that is why it's dangerous and should come to the parliament. Senator Betts chose not to answer the question, but it is a fact that the Prime Minister could do that if he wanted to, and that's what is so frightening about it, that we have in this country a situation where a Prime Minister can deploy our troops without reference to the parliament, and that is wrong and it should change. But what is even more appalling at the moment, Mr Deputy President, is that Prime Minister Key in New Zealand stood up and announced that the New Zealanders were sending 143 troops as part of an Australia-New Zealand joint mission to Iraq. That is on top of the 200 special servicemen and women we already have there, plus the 400 on standby in the Air Force. So here we go, hundreds more, it seems, going to Iraq, and the Prime Minister didn't have the courage to front it here in Australia and come out and say he'd already made that decision, that there had been a decision for a joint deployment. No, he went to New Zealand and let the New Zealand Prime Minister announce it, and we still don't know, Mr Deputy President, we still don't know how many more Australian troops are going to be deployed. We don't know how long for. The New Zealanders are saying up to 2 or 3 years. Well, let's hear it from the Prime Minister. Are we sending Australian troops? Are we sending our combat troops? Or are we sending more special troops? What is the deal? For how long? And to what end? What we have here is a situation where the response of the Australian government has never been to tell the Australian people what the outcome is that they intend to secure with the use of Australian troops. And at the same time, what do we know? Well, we know that the Turkish border is still incredibly porous. We know that young people being recruited from around the world are meeting in Turkey and taken over the border into the ISIL-held territories as a result of that, into the caliphate. We also know that when other countries in the region are broken in terms of their finances, we have got ISIS having taken the oil fields in Iraq and Syria. They're selling that oil on the black market. They have a $2 billion budget, a $250 million surplus, and what's more, it's alleged that Syria, the Syrian government, is buying oil from ISIS. It is time we got real about ISIS getting its funding from oil, and it's being sold on the black market, and to whom? What are we doing about that? What are we doing about the porous borders? Why don't we actually engage those issues rather than continue to deploy Australian troops with no mission, no specified mission, no timeline, but we know that there will be massive trauma as a result of this deployment. I have said endless times, we are sending our troops into a quagmire. We started off with just sending supposedly humanitarian aid, and this is ending up to be exactly the mission creep that we ought not to be supporting. As if it wasn't bad enough in 2003 when we marched into Iraq behind a Prime Minister, John Howard, who sent us there without a reason for war on a false pretence, and every other country has had an investigation into how their Prime Minister did that, but Australia hasn't. They have been protected, and Labor is as bad as the government in protecting the Howard government from the investigation we should have had as to why we went into Iraq on a lie. And now we are going again. We are going to have, before we know it, we're going to have 1,000 Australians stuck in Iraq again. For how long and to what end? This is not the way that we should be running the country, and it's not the way we should be exposing Australian men and women to the horrors that are going on in the Middle East as we speak. We should bring our troops home, and we should get serious about cutting off the money supply to ISIL, which they're getting from the black market sale of oil. We should be working in the diplomatic sense to close that border and stop those porous borders. It's time that we stopped this nonsense of suggesting that just sending more and more troops is going to make a difference. The Prime Minister said there'd be no boots on the ground. Well, we already have 200 on the ground, 400 in the air, and now Prime Minister Key tells us we're going to have hundreds more. The Prime Minister has been a coward not to front the Australian people with exactly how many more servicemen and women he's going to send there, or for how long and to what end.